So I'm going to be doing sand casting with cast in place stones, but in a channel set style. I'm pretty new to this. It was sort of like brought up on one of the groups, sand casting groups on Facebook that I'm a part of, and I thought I'd give it a go. I have some ideas on what to work with. Let's just give it a go and see what happens. All right. Okay, so I'm going to cast this piece of wood, and I've carved out a channel and sort of carved out where I think the stones are going to be, so that when I make my clay version, there's going to be like little seats for the stones to sit on. So it's proud here, but in the clay version it's going to be like little beds for the stones to nestle into. So hopefully that will work. And I'm going to turn into a slider, so I'm going to use this toothpick to create a core. Let's get into it. Alright, so I have Craig Daibler's flask, and I'm going to start with the male side, pack it from behind, loose crumbly bits of clay first, press it down with my thumb and my finger, and then big old handful on top and compress it. Alright, let's scrape off all this extra stuff on the back. Flip it over and let's put down our powder. So I'm using corn flour, but you can use talcum powder, graphite powder, a bunch of different things. Right, I've got my little pendant. I'm going to pop it in there, back down, press it in about halfway. The reason why I'm pressing it in back down is because I want to pack clay on top of this detail, and I want this channel set detail as crisp and as clean as possible. And so to pick up the best detail, loose clay, packing loose clay on the detail will pick up as the most detail, rather than pushing your object, your detailed object, into already compressed clay. It doesn't pick up as much of that detail. So we're putting the loose crumbly bits of clay on top of that pattern, pressing it down with our thumb and fingers, and you will get a really nice crispy impression. Big old handful, compress. Alright. Open it up. And let's get the pattern out. There we go. Cool, cool, cool. And I'm going to get my toothpick and I'm going to lay it into the mold. Where am I going to put it? I guess I'll just do it straight across the top like that. I'll press it into about just a little bit, I don't want it too close to the back of this piece because it might not cast properly. The toothpick might get in the way, and I'll just have a big line of unformed metal there. So I'm just lightly pressing it in there, and I'm going to close and open this flask, and I'll have a corresponding impression on the other half. So I've got a little channel to lay my toothpick in when it comes to casting. Cool. And I'm just going to tidy up that little mess it made. Just getting in there with the back of my tweezers and just giving it a little tidy up. Alright, all nice and tidied. Before I go placing stones, let's make the mold. So I'm going to put my straw hole here and go all the way through the clay. Then I'm going to use my knifey tool to carve out that funnel. I want it fairly deep. You don't want that silver bottlenecking in that straw hole for any longer than it has to. And we want to make sure that this straw hole is nice and clean. No loose crumbly bits of clay. So I just like to get in there with the back of my paintbrush and tidy everything up. Make sure that that funnel is nice and smooth. No loose bits of clay. Let's just go through with that straw one more time. Make it nice and tidy. Cool. Now it's going to be almost imperceivable, but this flat surface will have pinched up around that straw hole. So it's always a good idea to keep your object on hand so you can just pop it back in to the mold and give it a little gentle press, and that's going to consolidate that surface. So it's going to be flat again. We're just crispifying that design. Give that a little tidy up. Cool. Let's chuck in some air vents. I'm going to do some off of the toothpick, a little channel, and poke all the way through. There we go. Another one up here. And another one down here. So Craig's flasks have these little cutouts so that you can drag your air vents out of those. But I've been making my molds like this for quite some time. I'm set in my way. So I make my own air vents. Give that a tidy up. All right, let's set that to the side. Now we're going to place some stones. I've got some natural sapphires and I've got some pawpaw ointment. So I'm going to use this pawpaw as a gentle adhesive to stick the stones in position. You can use any petroleum jelly based product, so lots of Vaselines sort of things will work. And so see those little beds I was talking about? That's where we're going to put our stones. So we want the table of the stone to nestle in that little bed. Let's get the next one. Pawpaw on the table of that stone, and then drop it into the little bed I've made. So with channel set stones, traditionally, channel set stones are girdle to girdle. So they're touching each other. And we're emulating that in the clay. But one of the things we have to be mindful of is when the metal cools, it shrinks. And so it brings the stones closer together. And if you've laid your stones down so they are already touching, when the metal cools and shrinks, those stones are going to be brought closer together. And if they're already touching, the only place for them to go is into each other. And so they'll break each other. So you need to make sure there's a teeny tiny gap in between your stones so that when the metal shrinks, they're brought closer together but not into breaking contact. So now I've got all the stones in there. I'm just going to give a bit of a fuss to getting them all straight and making sure the gap between all of them is there. Minuscule, but there. Alright, so stones are in position with a teeny tiny gap in between all of them. And they're looking pretty straight. I'm happy with that. Ready to cast. Don't forget to put your toothpick in. Cool. Let's close and cast. Alrighty. Get that metal down the hole nice and quick. The whole contents of that crucible goes down the hole in one big blob. And make sure your flame stays on it the entire time. 1, 2, 3, whoop, down the hole. Let's chuck that extractor on. Alrighty, let's open it up and see what we've got. Cool, cool, cool. There's our toothpick. There it was. Cool. Alright, let's get that out of the clay and have a closer look. I would have liked those stones a little bit closer together, and I would have liked them to be set a bit deeper within that channel. And there's the hole. Yeah, alright. So I would place them closer together, and maybe with my master I'd make it deeper around the little beds. Okay, so this was the master I used originally, and I think it's just not deep enough to get the real channel-y look. So I've made another one, and I've made it a lot deeper, but also I've just left out the little lumps where the stones are going to go, and I'm just going to place them by hand, and it does mean the stones will be set down lower, but maybe that'll make it look more channel set and make it a bit more dramatic. Let's give that a go. Alright, as you can see, I didn't bother with the core this time. I'm just going to focus on the channel setting. I can always drill a hole through it, or solder a jump ring on it, or a bail on it if I need to, or if I want to. Alright, so I'm just going to place these in by hand, and I'm just going to load them up with the pawpaw ointment and place them in, but I'm not really going to like create a seal with them yet. I'm not going to press them down. I'm just going to sort of gently put them in rough position, and then once I've laid them all down, I'm going to come back in and just tighten up their positioning, make sure the stones are close to each other but not touching, make sure they're all in a nice straight line, and then I'll go and press on their little bums and create that seal between the stones table, the clay surface, and the pawpaw ointment. I reckon I can fit one more stone in there. So let's get these shuffled along. There we go. One more. So they're all in there now, and I'm just going to go along and get them into position and give them a little bit of a press on their bum to create that seal so that they don't go sliding anywhere when they're being cast. Being very careful not to press them into the clay. Alright, let's have a look at that. Alright, that guy's a little bit off. Let's bring him over towards this way. Alright, let's have a look. Yeah, pretty straight. I might move that guy over a little bit more again. Cool. All right. Let's close it up and cast. All right, let's open it up. Let's see what we've got. Cool, that looks pretty good. Let's get it out of the clay and have a closer look. So pretty good. There's just like a little bit of a gap between this one and this one, where the rest of them are like girdle to girdle. But that's such a small problem to have, really. And I prefer the depth of them. They look like they're really channel set. Now, one of the things you might have noticed is I used fairly light green to yellow stones, and they're looking really dark. Let me show you a little trick about that. All right, so I've just set it up with my third hand, and I'm going to set my flame to an annealing flame. So it's just going to have a tiny little bit of orange in the tip of it. That's my annealing flame. I'm just going to heat up this whole casting gently. And what I'm doing is I'm burning off any residue and soot that's trapped behind these stones. So between the stones and the silver that are holding them in place, there's residue or, I don't know, soot or something that's trapped behind those stones. And I'm just going to burn it off. So I'm just lightly heating it. Pretty much I'm annealing it. So I'm getting it to that pinky orange color. And that'll be enough heat to burn off anything that's trapped behind those stones. Can you already see how yellow they've gone? Big difference. And once that cools down, I'll pop it in my pickle and get the metal really frosty white looking, and that'll also help with bringing out the color of the stones. Okay, so I've been playing around trying these two styles, where it's just a channel that's been cut, or this one where I've got little fake stones so that when I place my stones in, the table of the stones will be flush with this surface, which is what traditional channel setting does, is that you've got your pendant or your metal surface and the table of the stones are flush with it, except they're set in a channel in between two rails. But with this one here, with this style, the stones are actually set much lower in these two rails in this channel, which isn't very traditional. But I've been playing around with the two, and I prefer the deep channel. So these ones here are the deep channel. So these are using just something like that, where I've cut a channel in it, and the stones are cast in place deep. And so those rails look really dramatic, and those stones are set deeper, and it looks pretty good. Versus these ones, where the stones have been cast in place higher, using something like this, and they just don't look as, well, they're not as deeply set, which is the whole idea. But it just doesn't look as good. It doesn't look as dramatic. They look too flush set. Where these, having them deep in the channel, is much, much more attractive. For sand casting anyway. Very cool. All right, well, thanks for being on that journey with me. Interesting results. Wasn't exactly what I was expecting, which is always fun, and it's fun to sort of explore that with you guys watching as well, and hopefully learning with me. Yeah, until next time. Bye.